When you look in the mirror and you make the change, that's what this talk is all about today. Excuses Be Gone. It's based on the book from Dr. Wayne Dyer. And our founder, Ernest Holmes, was often quoted as saying, change your thinking, change your life. And what happens is that many of us operate on a subconscious. I mentioned that last week, that something like there's studies that between 85 and 95% of our life we live on the subconscious. And I was reading recently that the human brain thinks something like 60,000 thoughts in a 24-hour period. That's a big number. The part that is also astounding is they are the same 60,000 thoughts that you thought yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Not too many of them are new. And unfortunately, and I say that because that's where the excuses come from, quite a big number of those are excuses. We make excuses about everything. One of our favorite excuses, and I was using this up until just this last week when I decided that I was going to stop doing that too. We make excuses if we run late for appointments. I tend to try and be early for appointments. I try to be like at least 5 minutes early. I used to also, when I was in business, have an intolerance for people who were late. Well, one thing I did do is gain some tolerance, but I also gained a fact that sometimes I'm not always on time. But what I found is I gave an excuse why I was late. I felt like I needed to explain, and one of the things we're going to talk about today is you don't need to explain. Don't complain, don't explain. Isn't that a nice little rhyme? Don't complain about life and you don't have to explain. Because last month we were talking about do your best. And if you're doing your best, you don't have to offer any excuses and you don't have to explain it. That doesn't mean you have to be calloused or disrespectful. I'm not suggesting that at all. I mean, I apologize for being late. But I don't say, oh, the traffic was heavier than I thought. That was what was going through my mind as I was driving. And I, oh my goodness, all the slowies are in front of me today. But what I have to know is I don't know what's going on in the person who's driving the car in front of me. And it's up to me if I have an appointment to get there on time. It's not up to anybody else. So that's the other big key in this whole process about excuses, taking full responsibility. Last week I talked about that. Are you willing to take responsibility? And then I also talked about the willingness, because that's one of my favorite things. Are you willing to take full responsibility for your actions? Because when you take full responsibility for your actions, you can become aware of what you're doing because you're conscious. You're not saying the traffic made me late. You're not saying that, oops, I overslept. My alarm didn't go off. Whatever excuse that we tend to use, if you get rid of that and just say, I'm responsible for everything, then you can become aware. Then you can start living the authentic self. You know, it's all part of, a lot of times we make excuses of why we're not perfect, whole, and complete, which has to be the almost complete opposite of what we teach in the oneness of the divine. So if you're divine, part of the divine, which is all that there is, you're already whole, perfect, and complete. There's nothing wrong with whatever you're doing. You're just going through a life journey. You're just going through a learning experience. It's a chance to do something new. There was a song I listened to, I've been listening to on this CD. By the way, we had these available to sell for like, I think, $7. But I've been listening to it in my car. And in this month's daily guide, Michael Gott, who wrote him, referenced this Jana Stanfield, who wrote If I Were Brave. And I was listening to it and I didn't realize how much that tied into everything. If I were brave, and I have this little saying on next to I have a little meditation table with a little Buddha and a little saying on it. It says, what would I do if I knew I could not fail? And I have it there as a constant reminder. And that's what this song is. What if I were brave? What would I do if I knew I could not fail? Because what we do is we make excuses for not being our authentic self. We make excuses for not doing all that we can do, all that we came here to be. We're that unique expression of the divine. And when we make excuses like saying, I'm not smart enough, we're trying to alibi our way out of not doing our best. Because how could you not be smart enough? If you're one with the divine, if you're already all that God is, you're already smart enough to do whatever you came here to do. And it's only when you buy into or believe what somebody else has said that you start downplaying yourself. When you're afraid of taking a risk or going out and doing something different. So I'm going to invite you to give up those kinds of excuses. And when you do that, when you're willing to accept responsibility, when you're willing to surrender, and the surrender I'm talking about is surrendering ego. Last week I mentioned ego is an acronym for edging God out. Whenever your ego's in play, God is on the sidelines. So you edge God out when your ego is in play. And we do this. It's our natural instinct. And so what happens is we have to overcome our natural instinct, our natural training that we've learned from our parents and from our teachers and from all of these things. Because that's where we get all of this conditioning. And then the other thing is, if you're willing to take responsibility and if you're willing to surrender, are you willing to hold a vision? You know, this whole theme for this year is to live an intentional life. So all the talks every month are set up to design to help you with tools to help you live this powerful life in a most invigorating, supportive way. To make changes in your life, like the change in the man in the mirror. You make a change. You step up to your authentic self. But to hold the vision. So I was looking at this recently because I had a friend I was talking to this weekend, and he was telling me again his vision for 2015. This is the third time since the beginning of the year that I've heard this. Now here is a man who is holding his vision and keeps bringing it back in, and he says, this is where I am on each one of these. He has 10 points. And so what I realize is that I do this too. I have these visions. I have a vision for the year, and I also reaffirm my intentions once a month. I write down 10, and I look at where I've come because I want to celebrate. Because when you celebrate what the universe has given you, you get more of it. So I reconnect, and I just did this on the 18th. I think that must be the full moon. Whatever time, I do it at the same period, like every full moon. Somebody told me that's when I should do it, and I said, okay, I don't care. It's a pattern. And so I do that. And what I love about doing it is I was looking at last month that I set it up. Of my 10 intentions I put down, I was successful in 8 of them. That's not a bad history. Now, I'm not bragging. What I'm doing is trying to demonstrate to you that it's possible. I know if I can do it, you can too. It's just a matter of setting your intentions and setting them down and then meaning them, surrendering into it, and then reviewing them. How would you know if you're ever going to arrive if you don't look at them? How are you going to know about giving appreciation if you don't go back and go for it? So that's about the visioning. And then, are you willing to shed all your unwillingness? I asked that last week. And I think that's really important because it helps you look at things a new way. So like looking at it in a new way is this last series of talks, the Sunday and the next Sunday, is all about what would you do if you didn't have any more excuses? What would you do if you gave up all the excuses that keep you from living your authentic self? Because what I know about the truth of you is you are one with the divine, and I know you have an authentic self there. The only thing that keeps you from showing up that way is every once in a while you cloud it with past behavior. And you say things like, oh, it's not my nature. Well, who said that? Somebody must have told you that at an early age, and you bought into it. You bought into somebody else's opinion. Just like one of your parents might have looked at a report card and said, oh, you're not smart in this, and you believed it. And so you say, like, I can't do this because I'm not that. You bought into somebody else's opinion. You absolutely have all that you need to do right then and there. And what about if you begin to practice of mindfulness? Some people say, oh, I'm so forgetful. That's an excuse. When you say I'm so forgetful, and what you do is you bring into the universe response. So you forget where you put your car keys. Or better yet, you forget where you put your cell phone. The cutest thing I have on my cell phone is my cell phone has an app on it that says find my cell phone. And I'm thinking if I've lost my cell phone, having an app on my cell phone, find it doesn't do me a lot of good. But I also have it on my iPad. But what I'm saying is that we have these built-in apps, if you were, that keep us from living this authentic self. And when we say things like, I am forgetful, that's why I can't remember that. So when I read this book the first time was in 2009, and I was living in Midland, Texas. And one of the things I realized is he uses an example is he always used to forget his keys, and he decided to be mindful about it. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I do. I'm always, as I'm going out the door, trying to remember where I put my car keys. So what I decided to do is be mindful about it. And I got a cute little decorative box, and I still have it today. And I place it on a stand right inside my door. When I unlock my door, I drop the keys in it. Now, sometimes they go back in my pocket because that is also an old habit. But 99% of the time, the keys are always in the box. They're always put. That's called mindfulness. That's a simple example of how you can retrain your mind. For years, I've been carrying them around, putting them down wherever. Now, maybe men are worse than that than women, because women have purses and they put keys back in purses. But men sometimes don't. They just drop wherever it's handy. And then they can't remember wherever handy was. And so you're not forgetful. It's what you choose to do. It's only an excuse what you really want to be, what you really want to do, so you can be mindful and you can make those changes. And if you're having trouble with those, make a contractual agreement with yourself. How about that? You have agreements all over the place. What if you said, I make an agreement that I'm going to change? I'm going to make an agreement, whatever it is. I'm going to do this from now on. And what you do is, until you get the habit ingrained, is in the morning when you get up, you recite the agreement. It can be a short affirmation, whatever you choose to be. One of the things I'm in a habit of doing is, before I get out of bed in the morning, I say a gratitude prayer for waking up, a gratitude prayer for the day, for I know it's going to unfold perfectly in the divine. I say that before I get out of bed. What it does is it sets up my expectations for the day. It also is reviewing my contract with the universe that says it's going to be a good day. And what it does is it allows me to know, even like walking in here today. I walked in and I got a text message last night that Luis wasn't going to be here for sound. So I had to and I asked Don if he could come, and he said yes. And then we had to walk in, and we have a couple little things that were going on around here. All of those are perfect because I already have given gratitude and already given thanks for the perfect day. So everything falls into place. Do you see how easy it is when we let go of our excuses about why things don't work the way we want them to work? Because when you pay attention to those, that's where you get more of. You know, some of the things, the reason why we use popular excuses is we say, many of us say, I don't want to try that because it's going to be difficult. Do you ever say that? I do. I find myself every once in a while saying, I don't know if I want to do that anymore. I don't know if I want to do this. It's going to be hard. And then when I find out, in many cases, it wasn't all that hard. Haven't you ever done something that you thought was going to be really difficult, and then afterwards you thought, oh, that wasn't so tough? So what if you knew ahead of time that what you thought was going to be true, maybe not true? By that I mean, we often believe our excuses, right? Part of the 60,000 thoughts that we have every day. We believe that that excuse is real. What if you ask yourself, can I know if it's true? What if you ask yourself, and when you say, well, it might be, can I be 100% absolutely sure it's going to be true? And if Brian Katie teaches this, have you ever done anything about Brian Katie, The Works? She teaches this as one of her 4-step questions. She says, can you know absolutely it's 100% true? And if you say, no, I don't know 100% absolutely true, then get rid of it as an excuse, because you don't know. That means there's always the possibility that it might not be true. How's that show up? That shows up in like, I don't want to do something because it's difficult, because maybe it's not. I don't want to do something because of family drama. What will my friends think? What will my family think? What will whatever it is, fill in the blank. It doesn't matter. Can you say it's 100% true? If the answer is no, I don't know that 100% true, then why not try it? Especially if it's your authentic self that's calling forth. I'm not talking about ego-driven, but if it's authentic self. We run into those things. Usually I have friends who are afraid to come out as a gay person because they are so afraid of what their family will say. And so what they do is they live 2-part lives. And what I asked them, I said, well, how do you know? And they just say, well, I just know. Everybody has to do what makes themselves comfortable. But you don't know. If you can't say it's 100% true, how do you know? And if you're willing and wanting to live an authentic life, why would you not take that chance? Because I also have friends who I know who have told their parents that, and they thought the world was going to be ending and that they were going to be disowned, and what they found out is their parents absolutely loved them. Absolutely loved them just for who they are. I have friends who have not had that experience, who have had difficulty, and they had problems with their parents doing that, but their parents eventually came to see the truth of who they were, and they saw their child as a happy person they wanted to see them, and they were able to change. So when you use family drama as an excuse, if you don't know if it's 100% true, then don't use it as an excuse. I was thinking about something else. I remember when I got divorced. I was the youngest of 6 children. Nobody in my family had ever gotten divorced. And when I talked to my sister, who was my close confidant, she said, you know, Mother's going to have a kitten. I think she said a cow. But I didn't know. I didn't know. So I told my mother, I said, you know, it's nothing personal. My wife and I are still good friends. It just doesn't work for us to be married. And she was okay with that. She used to think, well, what will the neighbors think? But my mother was also a divorced woman back when the days when divorce meant broken homes. I love that term. I don't love it, actually, because I think it shows some real strange behavior and thought patterns. But after that, my other sister got divorced. All of a sudden, it was okay. It was okay to not be in a relationship if it didn't work for you anymore. That's all that says. It doesn't mean one person is bad at all. All it just says is the two of you aren't working together anymore. So it's family drama is all I'm using around that. So one of the things that you have to do is decide, where did all these excuses come from? Because you didn't get there all on your own. You bought into the messages, but the messages usually came from our childhood, from our parents. Some of them came from our religious organizations. I know I was dramatically influenced by my early upbringing, and one of the things I had to do is get over that and get forgiveness, because I had a lot of hostility as an adult over my religious upbringing. And one of the things that you do, and when you get into the forgiveness, you see the good in it. You see the reason why it brought you along the path. I believe that there's good in absolutely everything. And that's why I think forgiveness is a spiritual practice. Spiritual practice of forgiveness allows you to look at the humanness and the divine spirit in the condition and the person in a whole new way. And then another thing is, some of us, we use excuses to manipulate people. Manipulate is such a funny word. It usually has a lot of energy around it, especially if you're the one feeling manipulated. We don't usually like to be manipulated because that usually means we're being controlled, right? But we often say that when we say, I'm too tired, or I'm not strong enough, or I don't have enough time. What we're trying to do is, whoever we're saying that to, is we're trying to manipulate them into doing it for us. We want them to do it, and really what we could do is, number one, we can know we already have everything we need to do it ourselves. Or, if you don't feel like you can do it yourself, you can be authentic and say, ask for the help. And just come right out and ask for what you want without using a manipulation of saying, I'm too tired or I don't have the time. One of the other excuses we have is we often won't do something unless we think we can be right, because we don't want to have the fear of failure. The problem with that is sometimes we hang on to that and demand that we're right. And we use it in a way that it shuts down, and it shuts down somebody else's ability to be right as well. And we use that as an excuse. We use that as an excuse so we can't be wrong, because we're afraid that that says something about us. And all it does is it means that there's another choice. And sometimes I have found myself arguing vehemently towards a particular position, and somebody else is trying to give me their point of view, and then I'm only half listening because I'm so intent on what I want to say. Am I the only one there? Nobody else has been intent. Anyway, and what I realize is suddenly they've said something which I understand turns me 180 degrees, and I realize they're right. And then I have to think of the gracious way to edge out and say, oh, you're right and I was wrong. Because it's a human condition. We want to be right. And sometimes, though, if we can stop using the excuse of being a fear of failure, we can open ourselves up to a new experience, because somebody else may just have a better way of doing something. One of the things I have to remember, and I did this early on with my son, is I told him when he wanted to, after his first year of college, when I had spent a great deal of money getting him there, and he had enjoyed himself very much. A little partying, a little studying, more partying, not so much studying. And then he said, you know, I really would like to give up school for a while and go in the Marine Corps. And I said, oh, no, you're going to be cannon fodder. And I really was worried about it. But what I said, if that's really what you wanted to do, and you really did what I wanted you to do and go to school, then I'm going to support you. But from now on, I'm no longer responsible for you. Because you're going in, you're an adult, you're 19, and you're making these choices. And then I said, what I'll do is, if you want, I'll give you advice from time to time, but like any advice, you can ignore it and make your own decisions. And I will always love you. I just am no longer responsible for you. And what that did is it set up a whole new relationship. That type of thing. What I found is I was in a centered enough space to have them help me take it to the next level, where somebody could resolve it for me. So these are excuses that we use. We use avoidance, and we use our excuses to keep us from living those type of things we really want to do. And what I'm suggesting is that you can use affirmations. Affirmations are a great way to turn excuses around. If you think about smart, you're as smart and full of wisdom as you need to be to do what you came here to do, if you remember that. If you want an affirmation like the little one I have on my meditation table, if I knew I could not fail, what would I attempt to do? I love that one. That is one I use for a lot of things, because It gives me the ability to live a little bit on the edge, a little bit to try things that are not in my comfort zone. Because in my comfort zone, I'd probably be a recluse. I can't quite imagine myself being a total recluse, but a little bit of a recluse. But it allows me to step out there. So one of the things I liked about in here is that we use excuses all the time for not doing things. I don't know how many of you are listening to me today, right here, who are buying into what I'm saying. I don't know if you understand how many excuses you actually make on a daily basis. It's just like on a complaint-free world. When I told people when we started this in last October, and I said the average person complains 15 times a day, that sounded astronomical. But once you start paying attention and become aware of what's coming out of your mouth, you realize that 15 times a day is not that absurd. And what you realize is if you have to go 21 days without a complaint, once you become aware, you think it's impossible. But what you know is if you take it one day at a time, pretty soon you can make the 21 days. Because you're becoming aware. So that's what I like about this, the daily guide this month when Michael Gott wrote, All Things Are Possible. Marianne Williamson, she does the, all of a sudden I want to say the miracles. Course of Miracles, thank you. The key to abundance is meeting limited circumstances with unlimited thoughts. Limited circumstances with unlimited thoughts. That means if you say, I can't afford it, for instance, one of the things I would suggest you affirm is that you can afford it, you just don't know how you're going to pay for it now. I'm not suggesting you go out and get whatever you did right then and there. But what I am suggesting is you change your thinking from I can't afford it, because I can't afford it means you're probably never going to have it. Because you're telling the universe you can't afford it. But if you say, I can afford it, I just don't know how I'm going to pay for it right now, and then you say, but I look at unexpected income to come my way to help, or to make it possible. You're affirming. I'm really the strong believer in unexpected income. I have some people who say, show me. Every month I put it in as a budget item, and every month I have something. This last 2 weeks I've had 2 examples of unexpected income. I had to go to the hospital for a procedure, and they told me it was going to be $200 was going to be my copay. Now I have insurance and I have supplemental insurance, but I thought, okay, it's still the beginning of the year. I didn't argue, but I thought it'd sure be nice if I didn't have to pay that. I got to the hospital and they told me with the combination of my 2 insurance, I didn't have anything to pay. That's unexpected income. That's $200 of unexpected income, and I gave great thanks for it. 2 days later, I was going to make some copies for a class I was making. And I was having trouble, and I was asking the person about making copies. They did the copying for me, and they took $100 off the bill. That's free, unexpected income. Do you see how it works? You've got to set it up with the universe to expect it so the universe can deliver. So I don't know. If you want more proof, I can keep bringing these up every month because I do this every month. But wouldn't you like to join me? Wouldn't you like to do that for yourself? Now, I don't know. Maybe it's not income for you. Maybe it's friends. Maybe it's something else. Put whatever unexpected you want in it. But when you set the intention, it shows up. The other thing is, you got to believe it'll show up. If you don't believe it, putting that out there, you're negating it if you don't believe it. You got to absolutely believe that it's going to happen. And trust me, when the first one happens, there is the proof for you. Because it's only going to happen for you when you believe it. And the reason I'm saying all that is, Michael Gott writes in here that when he was first graduated from college in the 80s, late 80s, he got out and he knew about computers and that, but he wanted one because he had seen them around, used them a little bit, but he couldn't afford them. He was a struggling songwriter, and he was a waiter to support his habits. of songwriting and singing around. For those of you who know, Michael Gott is now the Senior Associate Minister in Unity in Houston. He used to be the music director at Religious Church for Spiritual Living in Dallas for many, many years. So he can afford, as he says in here, since then I've gone through dozens of computers. And he said, what I have found is I can afford it. But he said, what I'm aware of is that thought process has still lingered. So that sometimes I still use that same mentality, not about the computers, but about other things. I think it's going to be hard, or I think I can't afford it. He says, I have a track record of things are going to be way harder than they actually are. I think that's what it is about people who do religious science. You can't expect instant miracles without actually becoming aware and doing a little bit of work on your own part. You have to show up and start realizing, like the man in the mirror, you got to change, look at who you are and change your thinking to change your life. Ernest Holmes said that. So what he does is, he makes an agreement now that it's not going to be difficult to do. And then he just lets it unfold, whatever it's going to be. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, I like this one. That really touches, I don't know how many of you know Dr. Reverend Jim Lockhart, but he used to be the minister in Simi Valley. And he's been around in religious science for probably 20-some years. He just retired. And he's traveling in Europe right now, writing a wine blog and writing a book with his wife, having a really fabulous life. This is a man who knows how to manifest abundance and the life he wants to lead. He's absolutely living his life on purpose. And what I like is what he said in here. He said, Michael said, I used to use the term co-creation when talking about the creative process, about creating the life. We used to, and many of us talk about co-create. I use that a lot, matter of fact. But what he said is, Dr. Jim said, rather than co-creating, what we actually are doing is directing the endless stream of divine creative energy. What we are actually doing is directing the endless stream of divine creative energy. So we don't have to generate the creative force. The creative force is already there. It just is. We use it and it uses us. Do you see how that works? It's a reciprocal universe. It uses us. It uses us to be the expression of itself. That's why we are so unique and why we're so important. So the wonderful thing he said is called life is happening around us. So I think we're all about choice. The choice is you can live in an excuse-free world, or you can decide to keep making those excuses for why life is not the way you want it. The choice is yours. Thank you.